we
This
get about
conference will now be recorded.
this is so we get about 2000 files every day, and they push this into S3 buckets, and from there we read this data and load the data into tables. Okay. And this particular JSON has data for almost 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 tables. So how do we load the data into 10 tables?
First, we have to put the file, then into the stage, then choose. Then we will have to again write it to table. From there, the common table we will have to route to the specific table.
Yeah, that's fine. How do we do that? So I have this header information with me. So header information should go into header table. These are all the columns of header. Can you see, right? This many number of columns. And I have lines. Lines I get about 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. And the size of this JSON sometimes is 30 MB, 40 MB, 60 MB, sometimes 1 GB, max 1 GB. That's what I have seen. How do we load this data into different tables? So you have to create views, and then whenever you get this file, right, you have to extract one view for header, one view for lines, one view for party accounts, and so on and so forth. And then when you run your select star from the view, insert into the table whatever you want. And it might be what do you call it? You have to use the merge statement, because sometimes when you're trying to insert, right, the same data might come again, and then there will be an update rather than insert. So whenever they send us the JSON, right, they send whether it's an insert, update, or a delete based on this particular. I don't see that in here. One sec. Yeah, it's not here. This particular file, we just go and then merge. Merge means if the record exists, we update it. If not, we delete it. We don't get deleted records for this. It's all soft deleted. Okay. So, and you see, right, open flag is equal to y. Something like we'll have, if it's deleted, it's a deleted flag is equal to y. So we go and update them. We do soft delete. We don't do hard delete. Hard delete means we don't physically remove delete from table. We will have a flag which is deleted or not, and then that particular flag will go and mark it as y. That means this particular record has been deleted in the OLTP system. But we keep them for history purposes, because data warehouse in any data warehousing scenario, right, we don't do any hard deletes. We just do a soft delete. Okay. So you, even though if your size of the file is very huge, maybe 5 GB or 10 GB, whatever Srihari was mentioning yesterday in the SQL server, right? So you extract them, whatever data that you needed, you extract them. Here I have about 12, 13 tables that I want to load the data, and then I'll extract headers separately, lines separately, party accounts separately. I create different views, and then whenever I run, I merge them into the target table, or I extract this data, load it into a staging table, stage not staging area. Once the file comes as a staging area, I load it into a variant table. From there, I load it into a staging table. Staging table is nothing but entire data is dumped into one particular table, and from there I merge into a target table. Are we clear, guys? Are you able to follow me?
Yes, sir. So the staging area or view will be created in the Snowflake stage, or it will be another table on top of that we are going to create a view.
It is your use case scenario. Normally, when you get your file, you create a table with a data type variant, right? You create a table for storing this
Yeah.
particular JSON file that
Mhm.
comes. You can write on top of it, or you can create a staging table, dump this file into that particular staging table, and you can write a view on top of the staging table.
Okay.
So normally we create a
Yes,
staging
yes, sir.
table, and then everyday file that
Mm.
comes, right, that is trunk and load. We don't keep the history because
Yeah.
storage is again a problem, right? We dump that particular file. Every day we get about 2000
Yeah.
files, and each of them of are different type. That is the reason I told you, right? We dump everything in one particular table, and each of them will have a category. It might be of OPL, or it might be of different applications, right? We keep all of them in one thing, and the application name is the other column. Based on the application name, we extract the data. Or if you want to create
Gotcha.
multiple files, that's also fine. It's all up to you. Multiple tables. If you're getting about 30 categories of data, right? And then use each one staging table. Staging table means nothing but a, a table. That's it. You use it for trunk and load purposes. Whenever you're trying to load today's JSON, right? You delete the entire data and load this JSON into that particular thing, and then on top of it, you you would have already written your query and created a view, and then select stars from view, and then you can use that view for merging into your target table. Are we clear?
Yeah, Shikhar sir. Are we performing this
Yes, sir.
one, Shikhar sir, as example?
No, it's very difficult, man. How do we do it? I this is a huge table. It takes a lot of time, and this is my office thing that I cannot share you as well. But I'm telling you the use case scenario, how things work in the real time scenario.
Okay.
And I have other lab examples that you want, if you want to work, right? I can get you some lab examples as well. One second.
Yeah.
Here is- So this is for Azure, but that should be okay. So this is not the file. One second. Yeah, querying JSON, create function, simple JSON. And I showed you it. There is a procedure, and then somebody else has written the procedure as well. If you go and look at procedure, right? Once we get into procedures, I can explain you that.
Okay.
Do I have this? Yesterday we looked at the metadata of JSON. Whenever we query, we can read the metadata. A recursive is equal to true on the same table. Do you remember that?
Uh,
No?
Yes, sir.
okay.
This
It
one,
gives
Okay.
object.
yeah.
Okay.
So the same table name and then recursive is equal to. And the other part I forgot to tell you, right? I don't normally use lateral flatten. Lateral flatten, people ask you as an interview question. There is an other alternative for lateral flatten. Let me show you that. It's called table of flatten. You don't need to write. That's all the table function. Let me show you that. I forgot to tell you that. So this lateral flatten, right? I can use another function similar to lateral flatten. See, table of flatten. You don't need to write input equal to greater than. So you can use this one as well. I'm going to send you this particular IO to JSON raw if you want to run on this. Okay, we can use this and then we can work on it. I'll send you all this stuff. If you have any questions, you can talk to me.
Yes, sir. So is that only the syntactical difference, not on the
Yes, no,
performance? In
nothing,
which case we need to
nothing
use
else to
that?
do.
Or
No, 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 no.
oh,
Plain and simple. It's much
okay.
more easier to use. I normally use table of flatten because lateral space flatten and then input equal to. So that is kind of little complex for me. I just table of flatten and then whatever you want to use. Both are similar. No performance issues. Both are table functions. You can use this. And people ask you lateral flatten. What is it used for? How do you use that? And all these scenarios, right? So you have to tell them. That is the reason I talked about lateral flatten. But when you are literally using in your stuff, you can use. See, I have given lateral flatten as well, and then table of flatten as well. Okay, these are the two things, and then what else? That's pretty much about it. So let's go, and then I'll send you this lab exercise as well. I shown you, right? And then what is there in this? And if you want to have data also, I've shown you the data loading exercise from the. Did you guys get a chance to do that exercise?
Is it from website?
Yeah,
Yeah.
have you
Some
guys done
part
that?
of it I have done, Shikhar. Yeah.
Okay. And if you can, if you can do that right, you can use the same data set, and then you can use your. Uh, 1 second, where
Okay,
is
Shekhar
this?
sir, let me. I have one question there. In the this is a transaction table, right? What we are downloading
No,
the file.
it's yeah. Basically, you can say
Yeah,
transaction or a raw or staging
yeah,
table.
yeah. This is a flat is a this is a transaction file, and these are the dimensions, right?
These are the
And this
dimensions:
is
float,
going to be fact.
dim, dim,
Yeah,
and the fact table.
fact table. Okay.
Okay. Vikram, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Did you get all the data from Sindhu?
I think I will get by today.
Okay. So I have given an exercise where you have to download the data. Let me show you that because you joined little late, right? Let me talk about this for 1 second.
Shikhar sir, but that path needs to be updated in the
Yeah, I have
file.
updated one.
It's not the right path.
No, 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 I
No,
have
Shikhar
updated
sir.
this.
Okay,
I'm
the
gonna
one I
open this
had
right
down.
now. Maybe I'll send you the file one more time. I think I have updated it. So see, go to HTTPS. I'm copying this path.
Okay, now it is updated. Yeah.
I'll send you this file one more time. No worries. And I see Dhanalakshmi and Veena. Hi guys, you don't even speak to me. Please talk to me if you
Hi,
have
sir.
any questions. Hi Dhanalakshmi. If you have any questions, right, please talk to me. Or if you cannot speak to me in this particular meeting, right, you can chat with me privately if you have any questions. I want everybody to aggressively work on this because the market is very good right now. If you're really looking for a job, this is the right time. Okay. Yeah, I know. So, hi Veena, can you hear me? Yeah, Veena, thank you. That is good enough. Okay. So, yesterday, there was an interview for one of the guys I taught my this same program. He was from the old batch, and his what do you call it? His package was, he had about 6 years of experience, and his package was 6.5 lakhs or something. They gave him a hike of 20 lakhs. I was also shocked. Normally, whenever you do right, my average price hike for the entire batch is 63% or 64%. So they gave him a hike of 20 lakhs, almost double than whatever he was expecting. But he has to move to Gurgaon. That is a different story. He's a bachelor guy and then he's ready to move. So the market is very good right now. So I would ask you to aggressively work on it. And if you're looking for a job, is the right time. Okay. And Vikram, this is the URL, and I'm gonna send the lab one more time to you guys. You select all the columns, download, and then load it into this particular staging table or raw table. And from there, you have to extract and build this fact and dimensions table. Okay, I have given this one, and you go through, create the tables, and then load the data. When you are trying to download the entire set, and
So when I try to do that, it gives me an error. But when I do try to do a portion of it, it has succeeded. Not sure what is the issue.
and then
So if I select everything, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
you have to you have to tell me. That is a challenge, right? If it's plain and simple, why would I tell you? Whenever you load the data, where did you put the file into?
No, no,
Even
not about the loading part, but even the downloading from this website.
yes,
Website
yes.
I'm talking about, not on
Okay,
the technical front of Snowflake. Yeah.
okay.
If we select everything and if we try to download, it is not working, giving error.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I did that before sending it to you guys.
yeah, we
So
saw that,
But
but
portion,
today also I
but
tried.
portion of it is working. Yeah.
1 second. Okay. I'll do that at the end of the class. If we have any challenges, and then I'll fix it and I'll get, and I'll it. And if you want to do a portion of it is also fine, because you know the columns that are there, right? You go choose the columns that you wanted by looking at the table data.
Okay,
If you select the columns, and then
Okay.
this JSON, right? They use weather data from, okay. So okay, Santosh, I'll check and let you know. Okay.
thanks, sir.
And then mhm, what I was telling
And
you.
sir,
So
this is not only for
yeah.
JSON, it is also for loading also. Okay.
Yes, yes. JSON, I think it doesn't work. There is a weather table that, yeah, analytical queries. If you can go through this, most of the SQL part and everything, you'll get used to it. So I don't know whether this is there or not. Sample weather open map this is duplicated. Okay, and this is weather. Let's connect and then see. And the examples that I've given for JSON, right? They're little complex as well. It's not that easy. Once you do that by default, right, then probably you should be good enough in handling things. I think they have taken out the weather details. So there was a weather information here, weather related tables, and they're not sharing it anymore. So that's what it is. When you look at this particular thing, right? When I open this tables, so there was this weather details table 14, table 16, and hourly, daily kind of thing. If you look at this JSON description, right? This is how the JSON was. So you have to do the weather map. So weather map is open this one where you can get the weather for that particular day, and you can download and do this example as well. Okay, so calls extended daily forecast by city name, and there is a way that you can download this per day. So there was an exercise. I was trying to attend an interview, and I normally I shouldn't do that, but I do it because I fake my resumes and then post it and try to attend a couple of interviews. I do it once or twice in a month, and then I'll take out my resume to feel or sense how the market is, or what kinds of questions they're asking me. And one of them, they wanted me to work on Matillion. They asked me to do an exercise and send it to them. And in the exercise is right. I'll tell you when we come to the next part of it. So I have to read the current data from they told me that you pick any 50 cities in the world and then go to the weather map, the same thing, whatever you open weather map, and extract the data of for that particular day for 50 cities, and then generate that file, and the file should be loaded into S3 buckets. From there it has to be loaded into a table, and whenever you do, right, everyday data should be loaded into the table. So today's data, tomorrow data, it has to be appended, not replaced. So I used Python and S3 buckets and Matillion, and then loaded the data and sent it to them. Just out of curiosity, I have done, but they did not select me. That's a different story. I sent it very late because I couldn't find time, and then they said it's very late. By the time we cannot consider you. So that was some of the examples where you can interact with any of them, and then the other part, what I wanted you to do is right. So I do have that weather.py, right, Python, that I have written. Yeah, this thing you have to. What is it doing? So I would suggest all of them if you can have some time, right? I want you to go through Python and learn a little bit of Python. You don't need to be a very senior guy or very medium guy as well. So beginner kind of thing. If you can understand these topics, right? I'll send you these topics as well. I want you to, even though if you are from a different background, you will learn these topics, and I'll show you how to load data using Python. I have a couple of exercises. I have all of them here. When we go there, I'll show you how to load Python and all this stuff. So learn these 10 topics that will really help you out to market yourself. Whenever you're having a resume, right, you can tell them you have done Python, okay, I'm okay with Python. Given a chance, I can prove myself, but this is what it is that I have done. And then I'll show you one use case where I tried to extract from SQL Server and load it into Snowflake using Python. I have the entire code for it as well. I'll share with you, and then I'll guide you. We can walk through that, but I want you to go through this Python. You have to learn this Python. It's not very complex, very simple. You can download any of the. There are tons of videos on YouTube or on the Google part of it, right? But make some time because you have the entire week of time. Take one topic and then go through that. Apart from Snowflake, by the time the Snowflake is done, you'll have a familiarity with Python, and in your resume you can have Python as well, because people look at Python also as part of the ecosystem. It's free. You can have lot of libraries to handle, lot of use cases to handle from Python, and some of them for analytical purposes they use Python. So people use Python extensively in their environment. Reason, you don't need to pay anything for Python, right? So I want you to go through these 10 topics, please.
Sure,
Okay,
sir.
this is very important, and it doesn't take more than 2 weeks for you to learn this. I have given you basic topics. First one, variables, loops, library. How do you, so if you want to connect to MySQL, Oracle, Snowflake, how do you do that? And writing functions, how do you and then logging if you want to log this data somewhere else, and OS operations, create a file, delete a file, and all this stuff. Installation of packages like pip install, there are a couple of them. And pandas in other library, how to generate CSV files, and then exception handling. If you can learn this, you're good enough to market yourself. Okay, don't think that see, the biggest problem is, right, the ecosystem is the biggest problem. You can perform very well in Snowflake. Whenever they ask you in interviews, you can answer the Snowflake part of it. But when they ask you about the ecosystem, how did you schedule jobs, which particular tool that you have used, and then what was the communication that you have set up, and how did you migrate your code from dev to prod, so there are a lot of ecosystem related interview questions that if you can answer them right, you will have 80% of chances. And Python is one of the ecosystem part of it. Okay, and if you want to get this kind of hikes, you have to invest your time and money. Think that this is a business that you are doing, and if you want to get more money, you have to put your time and be aggressive and do all the exercises. You can bug me anytime on the WhatsApp. If you have any questions, I can answer you, but be ready. Put your time so that you can get a very good opportunity. And be wise in choosing your jobs. Now there are a lot of strategic hiring is going on. Strategic hiring means now there are a lot many clients in US, they signed up and they wanted. So I am from Accenture, somebody is from HCL. So three or four of them trying to bid for the same project, and then they would hire you, and they want you very badly, so they would give you a very good hike and then hire you. After 3 months, then if the project did not come to them, what will they do? They will leave you. And if it's a big company, they'll keep you and then they'll try to place you in a different, or they might be having another projects as well, they might push you into different thing. But when you're looking for a small companies, right, they are ready to pay you more, but make sure what project that you're going to work on, is it a POC or the client is already there. You have to ask these questions to them before making a decision, because there's 30% of strategic hiring is going on. They'll pay you whatever you want. If you ask 20 lakhs, okay, fine. But make sure, do they have a client? Is a project already in place? Is it a POC that you have to do? So there are many things that you have to talk to them. And if you think that okay, 3 months of honeymoon period, I'm okay, I'm get 20 lakhs, and after that, if you want to try, right, you can try. Already you had a hike for 3 months, and you can tell them this was a POC, and then I've done a POC, or it was a support project for only 3 months. It was a consulting. If you want to still, but your salary would have already been hiked, and from there, they might give you 10%, 20%. If you want to take a chance, you can take a chance as well. But if you are already working on Snowflake, that's a different story. Okay, this is pretty much about it. And then now let's get back to the Snowflake AWS loading and unloading data. And I'll show you an example how to connect to Azure and then load the data and unload the data as well. Okay, so one more thing, if you have implemented your Snowflake and AWS, you can still talk to Azure, you can still talk to GCP and get your data as well. So there is no limitation that you cannot get the data from other cloud providers, and vice versa. If you have installed, implemented in Snowflake and Azure, and you want to read from AWS, you can still read the data from AWS. Okay. So for this thing to happen, right, you have to sign up for AWS trial account. And AWS trial account, you have to give your credit card. They will give you an account for 1 year free. Make sure whenever they are trying to bill you, there are options that unless until they send a mail and then they get your consent from you, then only they can bill you. Now, Azure is not like that. They're plain and simple. They tell you this is for 6 months. We don't charge you anything. After that, if you want, you can take. You can change your email ID and take another account as well. So how do we get the? 1 second. trial without credit card. I don't know. I would never tried this. Can we do that? Alibaba Cloud Free Trial. That's not the one. But there is something I don't know. I don't want to waste time. Trial account. So you can go here, create an AWS account, create a free account, and you give your username, password. So the 5 steps, and you can connect. So I have another account, that's a free account that I already have. So this is my CAMEN4. This is my trial account. I can go to services, and these are all the services that you have. Okay, so what the heck? Okay, and then out of them, we'll be working on S3 buckets and IAM. So security part of this particular thing. Okay, these are the two things, and I'm going to talk about the S3 buckets once we get into this, right? I'll give you a overview of S3 buckets as well. Okay, first I'll do that, and then probably we can go. And I have IAM as well. Okay, so so first thing, right? You have to go ahead and then create an S3 bucket. You should have an AWS account or Azure account or GCP account, whichever you want. You can have a trial account. You can have that, and then you can create. So you create an S3 bucket, and then we access the S3 bucket from Snowflake. So S3 bucket is on AWS. Snowflake is also on AWS. Snowflake is a different account, and whenever you log into AWS, right? I logged into AWS console right now. That is a different account. So this is my username. Snowflake training is the username. And whenever you log into Snowflake, Snowflake automatically logs into AWS. Whenever you ingest data, store some data into a table, it is stored into Snowflake S3 buckets. Basically, whenever you implement the Snowflake in any of the cloud provider, right? Snowflake uses the underlying cloud provider's blob storage to store the data. If it is AWS, they store it in S3 buckets. If it is in Azure, they store in Azure blobs, and if it is GCP, they do it in Google storage. Three of them. Okay, and now you have to understand what S3 buckets is. So what is a blob storage? So blob storage is nothing but binary large object storage. That is like an image. You cannot modify once you have written the data. For example, you have inserted some data into your table, and once you update the data into a table, you cannot go and modify the data that is sitting in that storage. You have to create a fresh copy of it, modify the fresh copy, and create another version of it. Are you able to follow me, guys?
Yeah, Shekhar.
I want everybody to understand this is, if you can have the visualization of this, right, it becomes easier for you to understand how things work in Snowflake. So whenever you insert the data for the first time, it creates a data set copy, and then when you update it, it creates another copy of it. If you do 10,000 updates, it keeps 10,000 copies of your data. That means it will have different versions of the file, version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, because you keep on updating. It cannot update the existing file. That is the challenge with blob storage. But there are some advantages of it. When we talk about the performance part of Snowflake, I'll explain you in detail why Snowflake has chosen to go with blob storage, advantages, disadvantages, and all this stuff. But for now, think that the data that is stored in S3 buckets, or whatever the data that Snowflake stores in S3 buckets, it is versioned. And whenever we do, right, if you want to have the same name and then load it into the same bucket, it will fail. Either you have to delete the old file and load the new one, or you have to enable versioning on the bucket, so that whenever you load the file, it keeps another version of it. For example, we have emp.csv. When I load it into the first time, and then you'll have emp.cs. If you load make any changes and load it into same bucket, then you have to enable the versioning on the bucket, so that whenever you load the same file, it goes and marks it at v2. I'm giving it, so it internally marks it, but like v1, v2, v3, it keeps on versioning. So the same thing, whenever you update the table, it goes and creates another file, other version of that particular file, and whenever you query, it gets you from the second version. Understood? And you cannot see now I have logged
Yes, sir.
into my S3 buckets, right? And the S3 buckets that I am going to load my file, I can see the file, I can do all kinds of stuff. But the S3 buckets that Snowflake uses, right, that you cannot see. It's proprietary to Snowflake. They won't expose anything. And even though if you're logging into Snowflake and everything, it's internally used by AWS, nothing is shown to you. They manage it completely. Okay. So let's look at about S3 buckets first. I'll show you an example of S3 buckets. So you can go and type S3, it will show you the S3 part of it. Open S3. Okay. And then these are all things, right? If you look at it, DVS December batch. It was the last December, January. There was another thing. And then later I changed my batch naming. These are all the S3 buckets that I have created. Okay. B9, B2, Snowflake, SFDB, batch 7, batch 6. Okay. Now take we'll create a bucket. Bucket is nothing but a folder, and then this folder you can make it public, you can make it private, but whenever you're trying to create a folder or a bucket, it has to be unique. This is something like a URL that you are trying to have for your business. Whenever you have an URL, can we have a duplicate name for the URL?
No.
The same way. And how many are you are familiar with the AWS part of it? Don't worry, I'm gonna give you the orientation S3 buckets and then EC2 nodes. And in your resume, have that we have worked on S3 buckets, EC2 nodes, and all this stuff in your resume, so that people when they ask you, you can tell them that you have worked on AWS as well. Little bit. Given a chance, I can explore more, but see, this is what my scope was in my previous project. I have to create buckets, I have to load data into buckets, and from buckets, I have to load data into Snowflake. We used to get JSON files into S3 buckets. From there, we were loading into Snowflake. You have to come up with all kinds of scenarios to explain them. Okay. So I'll say SF, and whenever you create a bucket, it has to be all small letters. Weekend batch. And the reason, whenever you're trying to create a bucket, you have to figure out a reason. And the reason that is for AWS, right? Even when you created your Snowflake account, right? You have chosen your reason. Do you remember that? which particular region that you have to implement your Snowflake on,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, AWS Snowflake is nothing but a wrapper on top of AWS. So the underlying cloud provider, whenever you're trying to have your buckets or anything, you have to choose your region. So that is the reason they are asking you to choose the region from Snowflake page. Because whenever they are trying to create an account in AWS automatically, then AWS needs this region as a mandatory thing. That is the reason they are asking you to choose your region. And the pricing varies based on the region. The same thing here. AWS, the pricing varies based on the region. If you go to Singapore, it's much more costly. APAC is okay. North America or US, right? It's much more cheaper when compared because they have started there. It's much more mature. Too much of competition. That is much more cheaper there. So the underlying cloud provider, whenever you're trying to sign up with any service, they ask you to have the region. So that is the reason. So when you're trying to create an S3 bucket, what is AWS asking you? What is the region in which? So Snowflake, whenever it stores the data, it has to store in a particular S3 buckets, and it has to have an region. And based on the region, it has to charge you, right? That's why they ask you. Are we clear now? Why Snowflake asks for a region?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then so there are some restrictions when you're trying to, so in AWS, right, you can have a virtual private cloud. That means AWS, where is this AWS sitting on? It's a public cloud. That means you, how you access www.google.com, you are accessing www.aws.com. That means whatever the URL. So this particular thing is sitting on the public cloud. Whenever you access this one, right, it has to go through the public network. So private cloud is something like, if you have a private cloud in your office, means the cloud system is only, you have to connect to your VPN and then you can connect to the cloud. So it doesn't use any public domains to access. So when you use AWS, right, it uses public domains to access. Snowflake, public domains to access. Snowflake is created on public cloud, not on private cloud or hybrid cloud. That means it has to use, it is not private to you. It has to use the regular way how you use Google, right? And everybody uses Google. It's a public domain. Not everybody can use it. That means the network access is open to everybody. People can hack that. So AWS is also public domain. But inside the public domain, whenever you set up your AWS, right, you can have a private cloud. That means you are simulating that as if you are running in your company, right? These are the IP addresses that can access this particular data or this application. These are the IP addresses that cannot access. You can set up a network security inside AWS. That is called virtual private cloud. There are many aspects of it. I'm giving you a bird's view, high level view, so that you can understand what if somebody asks you because you won't be doing any part of it, because whenever you have implemented a Snowflake, there will be an AWS admin and guys who will set up the account for you, who will set up the S3 buckets for you, who is going to set up the access for you. Everything is done by them. You have to raise a request, that's it. But you have to know what happens inside, what they're going to do, right? So if people ask you if you know S3 buckets, and then you have to know how things work in S3 buckets. If you're buying a car, you should know if the car stops, you have to open your bonnet and see what's happening. The battery plug is loose, or you should have a little bit of things to work around, right? That is the reason I'm telling you what it is. Okay, so that is called virtual private cloud. Now you understood, right? Because it's a public domain, everybody can access the whole thing, and you are restricting them. This is my IP address, and you will get a request from this set of IP addresses, something like 216.230.90.10 to 216, the same thing, 10 to 99. So you, whenever you have your company, you would have already purchased your IP addresses, and you know your IP address from which range to which range. And you will tell in whenever you set up your AWS virtual private cloud, you you set up the network. If a particular request, for example, if I'm accessing Snowflake and I'm trying to load data from into Snowflake by reading my S3 bucket. So I'm creating an S3 bucket here, right? And this S3 bucket, if it has to be accessed, I can set up a network security telling that my Snowflake account. What is my Snowflake account? This one. This one has an IP address. If it this because I can get data from my S3 buckets into Snowflake. So that's the reason of doing this whole exercise, right? If you have any data in S3 buckets, you can bring it into Snowflake for your analytical purposes or whatever reporting purposes, data migration purposes, and all this stuff. So what you do, right? When you're trying to get the data, you can tell them. So when this is the my Snowflake account, and this particular account has an VPC endpoint. That means it will have an IP address. Guys, I'm not going too technical on AWS so that I don't want to confuse you. I just want to give you some overview so that you're comfortable how things work behind the curtain. In your work environment, right? Whenever I am trying to access, this is South One AWS. So that is APAC Mumbai. APAC Mumbai will have a range of IP addresses, and you go and set up in your AWS that these are the range of IP addresses. If a request comes from this particular range, go ahead and access it. If not, block that particular thing. You are trying to virtually create a network kind of thing inside so AWS. And whenever you're trying to talk to the AWS buckets from your Snowflake, you tell them this is the IP addresses that needs to be accessed. You open them. If a particular IP address comes from this request, then you service them. You go ahead and give the data. If not, block that particular IP address. Blacklist that IP address. Guys, are you clear? Are you able to follow me? Digest whatever I'm talking.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions, if you want me to repeat something, interrupt me. But I want you to have this understanding. Then it becomes easier for you. The reason is right. Whenever you're writing your queries in later part and whenever you're trying to do performance tuning, if you have this thought process, clarity of thought, that becomes much more easier for you to understand. Okay. So now let's
Shekhar,
go.
basically, what we understand, I mean, and I understood is instead of having the barrier at the top level, they are going one level down, and at the account level, they are having the barrier of accessing the buckets by specifying the particular IPs you allow, and if it is not in the particular list, do not allow. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true. And we can set up something in Snowflake also, something similar. If you can whitelist your IP addresses, we can blacklist the IP addresses. We have network security as well. I'll show you that when we get into the roles and responsibility security part of Snowflake. I'll show you that. But for now, think that the similar thing happens in AWS as well. So AWS, when somebody is trying to access your S3 buckets, you can whitelist the IP addresses. We can blacklist the IP address. If Snowflake is trying to access, Snowflake as a IP addresses which goes and reads the S3 buckets, and then you can open them, you can close them. It all depends. And the opening and closing, IP listing, whitelisting, blacklisting is all done by AWS admin, not you. But you have to know, if somebody asks you what is VPC endpoint, then you have to tell them, okay, this is what it is. What is the IP address? You have to, whenever you're trying to raise a case, or if whenever you're trying to talk to the AWS admin, right, he would ask you a couple of questions. And you guys are already 2.5 years old on Snowflake. You are masters on Snowflake. Then you should have a proper dialogue to tell them. You should not be white faced. I don't know what it is, and you have to call Shaker sir, and you have to call somebody, Google it, and identify. You should have this sort of, yeah, this is what I'm trying to access the S3 bucket from South One AWS, AP South One. This is my region from which I am accessing. Then he can easily understand, oh, you're talking. Then he knows what is the IP address, list of the setup things and all this stuff. Okay. And then coming back, So I'm trying to create a S3 bucket, and I'm not going to set up this big process, right? So that is the reason block all public access. I open public access so everybody can access. So I don't need to set up all this VPC endpoints, enablement, and all this stuff. I don't want to do that. It takes a lot of time for me, and I'm not an AWS admin. I learned how to do that, but that's not your job as well. So don't venture into that. Right now, your job is to get data from AWS to Snowflake. How do you do that? How do you load the data and all this stuff? That's what you will do. So just whenever you're creating, you create. I have clear steps of how to do the exercise as well. One second, I'll show you the exercises. Star. Okay, where is my? Yeah. So there are three ways of accessing it: by integration, by external stage, by external stage, by role, by user. If you look at right, how to create S3 buckets, how do you log into IAM. I have given you each and every step so that you can just follow this, and then you can create the stages for loading the data. So the reason for connecting to S3, right, or AWS or any other things, we will be creating an external stage. We have seen the internal stages, right? And now we will be creating an external stage, and we get the data from them and then load it into Snowflake. That is the reason I have given you very clear explanation of what to do, so you won't have any confusion on that. Okay. And then I have given the S3 access to it, and I talked about bucket versioning, right? Whenever you are trying to load the same file again, what should happen? It has to version it. If not, you have to delete and load that. I am disabling it. I don't want to do that. Okay. And then encryption, this is another thing. So you can have encryption in the files that you are trying to put into S3 buckets, and when you are trying to read the data into a Snowflake, right, you have to pass the username and password kind of thing, whatever the way that the encryption key, what is the key that you have used to encrypt the data in your S3 bucket, because people, this is all public cloud, right? People can hack and get, and if the file is encrypted, it's much more safer. So the S3 bucket, Snowflake has, AWS has lot many security features. Snowflake security features are much more better than Azure. That is the reason we went with AWS. And AWS has a VPS, one more addition that we have talked about, right? So that is not there in Azure. So Azure is little weak in security part of it. AWS is very strong in security part of it. Okay. So if a file is encrypted in S3 buckets, right? When you are trying to read the data, you need the encryption key. Even Snowflake, when you're trying to get into Snowflake, you have to pass the encryption key so that Snowflake can decrypt the data and load the data into Snowflake, and then Snowflake by default does the encryption again. Or whenever you're unloading into S3 buckets, right, you can unload into S3 buckets as well. That means you can create a file in S3 buckets. Then when you, the entire S3 bucket is encrypted, whenever you unload the data, this file that you're putting in S3 bucket should be encrypted as well. So Snowflake needs the encryption password. I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay. And there are some advanced settings. Object lock, if you want to log that particular file. And so I'll just say create bucket. So I have to select I acknowledge, because I am making it as a public, right? So they say if you are making it as public, you have to acknowledge it. I'm turning off block all public access. I'm making it open, so anybody can access this particular thing. Okay. And then create bucket. So now I have created my bucket. To upload the files, I can do that. Provide feedback. I don't need to do this. So what is my bucket? Weekend batch, right? These are all the buckets. This is the weekend batch. You select it, click on it, and then I can upload my data. And if you want to create folders underneath it, you can create folders. It's nothing but like your what do you call it? Your
Unix box system.
yeah, something like your Explorer, right? You can create this. So when you talk about it, the root is C. Underneath C, you can create all the folders and files and everything, right? This is also similar to the same thing. The root folder, underneath that, the S3 bucket is the root. Underneath that, you can have folders, you can have files, you can do all kinds of stuff. So I can upload a file, add files, okay, emp.csv, upload, upload successful. Okay, see, and this is the URL s3 colon weekend batch, and then I have one file that is already there. And this file is not zip. If you want to zip it, you can zip and load it. And then this is pretty much about the creation of the bucket. So let's come back. Let's look what S3 buckets is. S3 means simple storage service. So you are gonna store your data on Snowflake, AWS, and you will be paying for the storage. The storage charges what Snowflake is charging you is almost 300 times or 400 times more than the storage charges that AWS is charging you. Okay, so it can be used. You can, whenever you store the data in Snowflake, right, AWS, right, you can access the data. You can load whatever the size of the data, and at any point of time, any particular place in the world, you can access that. So is there any limitation of data loading into any table in Snowflake? Size of the table that we are talking about.
No, Shekhar.
Yeah, you can load petabytes of data. The reason, they have decoupled the storage and the hardware part of it. So whenever they decouple the storage and hardware, the storage can scale up, the hardware can scale up. The hardware can scale up to um, right, 128 servers. But the storage, you don't have unlimited. You can store petabytes of it, nothing to worry. Okay. So now let's come back. S3 means simple storage service. Okay. Simple storage service, primary storage service. You can have an S3 bucket, you can S3 folder, S3 object. Object is nothing but a file that you're storing in a bucket. So you have buckets, you have objects, and you have regions. Whenever we're trying to create a bucket, it asks us for a region, and I have created AP South 1. And whenever you're trying to create a Snowflake, the same region names. Snowflake also uses the same region names because it's mandatory for Snowflake. Whenever it wants to create an account, it has to have the same region name. Okay. Let's hold on 1 second, please. So we have, sorry guys. So we have chosen the region. That is the reason Snowflake, when you create an account, it asks for the region. So when it goes and creates an account for you in AWS using the stuff that you have sent. So whenever you are accessing it, it accesses the same buckets. It will create buckets for you in AWS, and that is not exposed. Okay. And some more thing, right? So whenever you're trying to load data, and if your S3 buckets in North America region, and you have created your Snowflake account in Asia Pacific South one, then there are other charges. Whenever you're trying to move data around in AWS, you have APAC region, you have North America region, and you're trying to move the data from APAC to North America, then there are some charges called data transfer charges, because you're trying to talk between two different regions and you're trying to move the data across, and you will have the charges. Same way Snowflake, so users, you will be charged more charges when you are trying to unload it to an account which is not part of your regional account. So my account is in Asia Pacific South 1, and if I'm trying to access a bucket from North America AWS, then I will have more charges, extra charges for me, because the cloud provider charges Snowflake for that. Snowflake automatically transfer the charges to me. If I'm trying to access the data, if I'm trying to load the data from North America into APAC South tables, then it's cross region, so you'll be charged for it. Or sometimes you'll have restriction that you cannot charge, you cannot communicate, you cannot load also. You have to talk to Snowflake and get the permission to load that as well. Okay, that is the same with the underlying AWS, because AWS, when you want to communicate, so if you look at it, right, AWS service only work with, communicate with each other if they are in the same AWS region. If you want to communicate to other region, you will have charges. You have to raise a ticket to Snowflake when you're trying to unload it or load it from a different bucket, because these two buckets, AWS AP South 1 and my account which is in AP South 1, they can talk to each other because both of them are in the same region. But if you're trying to talk to a different account or bucket in a different region, then you have challenges. You have to talk to Snowflake and you'll have charges as well. Guys, are you able to follow me?
Yes, Shekhar.
Do you think this is important for you, or it's going to really help you or not?
Yes, Shekhar. Yeah, it is going to be
It will be like
helpful.
important getting to
Yeah.
know what's at the background.
Yeah. So let's coming to this particular structure, right? You have AWS, you have a root bucket, and you have objects, you can folders, you can have folders, objects underneath the folder. This is just like a Windows Explorer, right? You can create whatever you want, but you will the bucket name should be unique. If you give duplicate names, it doesn't allow. And then you should have the bucket name in lowercase. So if you look at this, right, the AWS and S3 bucket, this is covered by a region. AWS US standard, AP South, and all this stuff. Okay. Do we have new folks today? I see the count is more. Okay, then cool. So when you come back to this, right, the next one, pricing cost overview. So the pricing depends, S3 basics. The pricing depends upon the storage cost. Applies to data at rest in S3. That means how much data that you are pushing into S3, you will be charged for it. Charge per GB used, how much of GB that you are trying to load it into S3 buckets. And GB varies based on the region and storage class. Okay. And there is an important thing called storage class. Storage class is something like it's a feature of the S3 bucket which tells you how do you access this particular bucket, how frequent do you access them. You want to be accessed every time. So if it is an infrequent access, right, that means you have an archival thing. So you have a table and the orders, and the orders you have about there might be some restrictions in the work environment where you should store the data for 7 years. So those are the compliances. When you are trying to store the data for 7 years, what happens? So I used to work for a networking company, and then I know I Cisco, right? Have you heard? I worked in Cisco for almost 13 years, and I was a contractor. I was not a full-time employee. And then we used to have these WebEx calls, right? WebEx recordings, calls, data has to be stored for 7 years. And if you look at the volume of data, that particular WebEx tables, right? Each of them used to have 300 billion, not even million. I'm talking about 300 billion, 500 billion of data. The data volume is huge. And when you're trying to get into Snowflake, that whole historical data is you have to have too much of storage, too much money, right? So what we do, right? We archive. We just keep only 3 years of data in the table, and the other 4 years of data we push it aside into an backup, like a Linux box, or the data we just generate some CSVs and DAT files and push it into Linux boxes. Here, the same way, when you are trying to use your data for archival is very cheap in Snowflake. So you can the pricing is very cheap if you, but that means you're not gonna access. You're gonna access once in a while in a month. Then it's that kind of charges, that kind of characteristics of that particular storage. That's what it's called storage class. How frequently do you want to access? Based on the frequency of it, you're gonna be charged. So if you can archive the entire data and keep it aside in S3 buckets. Okay. Request pricing, moving data in and out. When you're trying to put, copy, post, list, get, these are all the actions that you're going to do. And based on these actions also, you will be charged. You can configure that. So you're not going to post anything. You're going to only read one time loading, and then you're going to read. Then your cost is going to be reduced based on the actions, whatever you do. List means it shows you all the get means. So you understood now why list and get in Snowflake data ingestion. List at the rate of my stage, list at the rate of user stage, list at the rate of, they are reading from S3 buckets. The data is sitting in the buckets underlying S3 buckets. So hold on, please. I have to have some water, please. And why did we use put and get? Where are we putting it? We are putting into stage. Where is the stage? Stage is an S3 bucket underlying. Behind the curtain is an S3 bucket. You are pushing it into S3 bucket. You are getting from an S3 bucket. Now we understood why we use put and get list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Okay.
life cycle transition request. So life cycle transition means I'll tell you. We'll talk. I'll show you. Data retrieval, archival, restore, and all this stuff. So whenever you're trying to sign up for S3 buckets, and this is not your role. So, but you have to understand. So how things work behind the curtain is very important for you. If some AWS guy is talking to you, what kind of stuff that you want, this bucket is full, you have to migrate your data into a different bucket, and you have to organize your data in a different way. And if he guides you, right, you should be able to pick up and then do that stuff in the AWS, so that they don't have any surprises, because you are 2.5 years old. You have been working on Snowflake for 2.5 years. Okay. And if you want to look at the pricing part of it, right, this is what it is. To get today class is completely theory about AWS, and in the afternoon we'll have some action. Okay. AWS S3 pricing. So this is a free tier, you can have up to 30 GB. Glacier, these are all the storage classes we talked about, right? Let me go ahead and then look at the pricing. So the pricing depends upon the region. APAC, Mumbai, where is this? APAC, Mumbai. So first 50 terabytes, 0.025 cents per GB. Next 450 terabytes, 0.024. How much Snowflake is charging for per terabyte per month? I showed you, right? If it's an on
$40 or
demand,
something.
$40. If
Yeah.
it's an upfront, then it's going to charge you $23 per month. And how much is the price here per TB? Can you see how much money Snowflake is making on top of this?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. So there are different intelligent tiering and then standard infrequent access, one zone infrequent access, glacier deep archive. These are all for archive. So 0.002 cents per GB. See how cheap is it, right? All storage is per month. Snowflake charges $40 on the cloud. That means they're minting money like anything. And the costs are going to come down soon. I think that's what my gut feeling is whenever they think, right? So these are all per month. First 50 terabytes per month, 0.0025. Okay, this is the pricing for it. So, and when you look at it, right, this is standard general purpose storage. You can access any particular point of time. No, that is the reason this is much more expensive. And then intelligent tiering. So, whenever you're trying to access this S3 bucket, uh, maybe once in a week, once in a month, based on the so this is a frequent access tier. First 50 that means if you are trying to read very frequently for 50 terabytes, this is the price. If you are accessing more than 50 terabytes, 450 terabytes, and frequent access, the frequent max means you are reading every day basically. Infrequent, and this is 0.019. That means you are not going to read, you're going to read often, not every day kind of thing. Archive access, that means you have archived it whenever you need, once in a month to once in 3 months you're going to access. The pricing is 0.005. So based on the tiering, you will have the there are two other parameters I'll talk to you that is important. Okay, and deep archive and monitoring and automation. If you are trying, so this is one storage class. S3 intelligent tiering. Standard is the one you can access any particular point of time, and this is the pricing. So Snowflake stores your data in standard. That's what I think. They haven't given any documentation of where they store, which particular storage class they use, and all this stuff. They don't mention anywhere. But my gut feeling is they store it in standard because we access data every day, right? And infrequent access for long-lived but infrequently accessed. That needs milliseconds access. Whenever you query the data, you have to get the data pretty fast. So again, network bandwidth is an important thing. You can store the data whenever you query. Your query might take a lot of time to get your data. If you're okay with it, you'll be charged very less. And whenever you're trying to query the data, it has to come pretty fast in milliseconds. That's again it's going to cost you. That means whenever they store this particular data in a storage hard disk, that storage hard disk should have a bigger network bandwidth thing, so that whenever you query, it has to serve you GBs of data per second. So this all again depends upon the hardware, and whenever you are putting money on the hardware, then you have to pay for the hardware, right? That's why they are charging you. S3 one zone infrequent access. Normally whenever you store your data in Snowflake, the data is stored into three different places. If one particular node is down, you still have two other places to access. That is nothing but S3 property. It's not Snowflake property. So by default, whenever you create an S3 bucket, the data is stored in three different places, and each region has three availability zones. That means whenever you have done APAC Mumbai, they have three different server farms, physical farms, where your data goes and resides. That is a physical farm, that is a region. They have the hardware sitting in there. And if one particular zone goes down, availability zone, you will have data in two different places, so that whenever you query, it serves you from a different server farm. So Snowflake, when it says it stores in three different places, it uses the underlying S3 technology, where S3 by default, when you created the bucket and emp.csv, this emp.csv is now stored in three different places. If one availability zone goes down, you will have other two. And if you go and if you think that, okay, I need only one zone, I don't want two other zones, then your cost is going to be reduced. One zone infrequent, that means I'm not going to access it very frequently. Even if the particular zone is down, I can wait for it, and then a couple of days later I can access it. Then the price is different, 0.0152 per GB. Okay. And then S3 Glacier for long-term backups and archives with retrieval option from 1 minute to 12 hours. When you say Glacier, that is archival. What I spoke about my data, right? 4 years of data is pumped into, for example, S3 Glacier. I don't need it. Whenever some auditing comes, then I have to read, get the data, and then you have a mechanism to get the data, and that can be retrieved in 1 minute to 12 hours. They don't guarantee you on the performance part of it, and you will be charged 0.005 cents per GB. 272. 36 paise for 1 GB. Isn't it cheap? Right? And S3 Glacier Deep Archive. And that is actually once or twice in a year. You put it there once or twice in a year and can be restored within 12 hours. If needed, you can restore it in 12 hours. And this is 0.002 per GB. So these are all the that is based on by APAC Mumbai. If you go and change it to North America, right? 0.023. APAC Mumbai 0.025. Because this price they come up with the real estate, that so you have APAC Mumbai three different availability zones, and you have to set up a server farm in the zone, right? And if you're trying to set up a server farm, it's you have to buy the land, you have to buy the hardware, and all these three different places. And the pricing of that particular land depends upon the region where you have set it up. That's why Singapore is much more expensive, because purchasing land for lease or anything for the server farm is expensive there. And India is okay. Mumbai is expensive. US they can set it up. That is the reason they have set it up North Virginia, Ohio, not in San Francisco or not in New York. They have identified some region where the land price is cheap. That is the reason they can serve you for a cheaper price. Okay. And coming back, how are you charge this? Okay. So creating a S3 bucket. So these are the parameters. Bucket name must be unique across all of AWS. The name should be unique across all of. I have created SF weekend batch, right? There is none other bucket with the same name in the entire globe. It has to be unique across AWS. Must be 3 to 63 characters length. Can only contain lowercase. Bucket names must not formatted as an IP address. These are some of the restrictions. Uploading import. I have shown you how to create a bucket, and I have done that, right? And then bucket folder object properties permissions. So general info static web hosting. You can create a bucket which is of static web hosting. That means they'll assign an IP address to that particular thing. So whenever you type an URL, right, you can point that particular URL to the S3 buckets as well. You can have your web content in S3 buckets, and you can associate, so that whenever you type the URL name, it's automatically pointed, redirected to the S3 bucket, and the web page is displayed. So whatever the web hosting that you do with the different companies, right, that can be done with S3 buckets as well. And logging, that means who has logged in, what they have done, Did they modify it? They can list it. They pull the data. They push the data. All this stuff is logged. Auditing purpose. Events. What if a particular, so somebody loaded some data, somebody put some data into a particular S3 buckets, then an event triggers, you can read, and somebody deletes, you can read that. Somebody adds a file and delete a file. This is basically two, because you cannot modify a file, right? So you can do events. You can listen to the event in Snowflake. I'll show you some examples of that. If somebody pushes some data into the S3 buckets, automatically Snowflake will listen to that event using a queue mechanism, and then it updates the data into your table. So we can set it up as well. I'll show you how that can be done. Okay, you can automatically listen. You can set up the listening mechanism, so you don't need to constantly wait for run the data ingestion program. Whenever there is an action on the S3 buckets, then you can load the data. That kind of event mechanism can be set. Versioning, we talked about it, same file loading again and again, versioning. And life cycle, that means, for example, you have your data in the standard access. After 3 months, I want to move it into infrequent access. After 6 months, I want to move it into glacier. After 1 year, I want to move it into deep glacier. You can set up the life cycle based on your data. You can set it up so that Snowflake, AWS automatically moves this data into different storage class. And then cross regional replication, you can transfer your data from North America to APAC to Singapore, Europe, whatever you want. Okay, tags, request or paste. If somebody is trying to access this data, right, you can tell them you're trying to sell this data, and you tell them whomever is trying to access, they're going to pay for the charges of getting the data. That is called request or paste. You can set it up as well. Transfer acceleration, if you're trying to transfer huge amounts of data, you can have a different way of transferring. Accelerate the data loads, data transfers, and you will be charged for it. General info, folder level, general info details. Object level, what kind of file is it? Metadata, CSV file or JSON file. You can open the file automatically. AWS identifies the file and then opens in a browser and all this stuff. Okay, so what is a storage class? The classification assigned to each object in S3. Available storage classes, standard. So this is an old document, but I've shown you the storage classes, right? When you look at the pricing, you have seen that. S3 standard, S3 intelligent tiering, and then S3 standard infrequent access, S3 one zone infrequent access, S3 glacier, S3 glacier deep archive. These are all the stuff. These are all the available storage classes. Glacier, deep glacier. So each storage class has the varying attributes. Storage cost, object availability, and durability. These are the two important factors that you have to remember. Object availability and durability. Okay, and what is it? So these are the examples of the storage classes. Standard, infrequent access, one zone. We just discussed it, right? So let me tell you about object durability and object availability. This is the percentage over 1 year period of time that is file stored in S3 will not be lost, and that is called the durability. 99.119 is the file you will have. The chances of losing a file is 0.1001%. So when your data is so secure, do you really need a backup? So the standard follows this particular. So based on the these two factors, your pricing varies. So if you look at this particular thing, right? Default all-purpose storage, or when usage is unknown, you don't know when you want to access it, you can access at any particular point of time and all this stuff. 99.11 nines of durability and 4 nines of availability. That means at any point of time, you are not going to lose the data. The chances of losing the data is 0. 0 0 0 0 10 zeros and 1. That means you're not going to lose the data at any point of time. That is durability. And availability, how can see you might access that particular availability zone. If that zone is not available, it can serve you from different zones as well. Whenever you're trying to read the file, what is the percentage that you're going to read the file, you can access that particular file. That is 99.99%. And chances of not accessing a file, when it's a list at your file name, you can have 99.99% you can read the data. 0.01% chance of not reading the data. That means if you have 10,000 files stored in S3 bucket, then you can expect to lose one file 10 million years. That's what the durability is. And for every 10,000 hours, you can expect a total of 1 hour for which the file may not be available to access. And this is the stuff that AWS guarantees to the folks. It's a return agreement. If they cannot access, then AWS pays for them as a penalty. These are the SLAs that you sign up with your clients, right? And if the client cannot access the data, then you have implemented this, then who's going to pay for it? They're losing the business, right? Then these are the SLA agreements that you sign up with Snowflake. So AWS is not Snowflake, AWS. AWS is so confident that this is the durability and availability that they can give it to you. So when you store your data in S3 buckets, right? How much do you really need backups? You have this much percentage of not losing your data, then why do you need the backup, right? So this is all 99.99. So if you look at this infrequent access, right, 99.9% availability and 3 available zones. So they go on decreasing the availability zones and then the percentage. So there might be a chance of losing a file in 100 hours or 10. So whenever you are paying them less, your the durability and availability are going to be less as well. Okay. Long term archival cold backups, 180 day and 40 kb minimums. We have to pay for 180 days, and then 40 kb is the minimum data that you have to store in the deep glacier. 90-day minimum and 40 kb. So 90 days is the, so whenever you pay for it, right, when you're signing up for glacier, you have to pay for 90 days, 3 months, and then 40 kb minimum. One zone is only one availability zone, 30 days, and 128 kb minimum. So these are some of the standards. I'm going to send you this slide deck. It becomes easy for you if you want to go through and then understand what it is.
So Shekhar, here only one copy in that S3 set.
Yeah,
There is no
yes. No other,
replication factor like in
no
HDFS.
yes, there is no replication factor. But Snowflake has chosen the best. It uses standard. It uses all the high end. That is the reason they're charging you more. They have three availability zones for replication and all this stuff.
Okay.
Okay. So you can change your storage class. There might be an example, right? I have a work file that I'm going to access every day for the next 30 days. This is one storage class. After 30 days, I may only need to access the file once a week for 60 days. Infrequent access. After which 90 days total, I'll probably never access the file again, but want to keep it just in case. Glacier or deep glacier. You can set up the life cycle. You can automate this process. You can configure that. Okay, so that you can save the money that you're paying to AWS, right? The moment you move your data into Glacier, you're charging only 0.0002 cents. Very cheaper. When you, so first 30 days it will be in standard, and then move into infrequent access, and then to deep glacier or glacier. You can set up this life cycle. Okay, and then, so this is what it is, right? 0 to 30 days. Object uploaded. So this one rule, you will set up a rule to move the data to a different storage class, 30 to 89 days. Usage needs infrequently. This is frequently. Cost, high cost tier, middle cost tier, low cost here. This is how we can do that. Okay. I think I have copied the same thing. So that is pretty much. So you can set up permissions on S3 buckets. Who can view the data, who can upload the data, who can delete the data, and who can see the permissions of it, who can modify the permissions of it. So these are all the permissions because you should have a security on top of the S3 bucket, right? You can. Though that is the reason when I said public, everybody can access. You can set up who are the users who can access that. There is like a Snowflake user. You can set up the users on the AWS as well who can use this particular thing and all. Okay, so bucket level permissions generally used for internal access control. So you can share read only access to somebody else. That means somebody can read only that particular file. Okay, you can share specific objects via link within anyone in the world so that they can just read that. And then sharing an S3 object in the world. So grantee under actions make public, we have done that. So this is some of the permission part of it. Versioning can be either on and off. If you're trying to load the same file again, no change in the name of the file, then if you enable version, then it happily takes and versions it. And Snowflake heavily depends upon the versioning part. Each table will have a micro partitions which has multiple versions in it. Okay, now you understood how things work behind the curtain, right? Snowflake is nothing but a wrapper on top of AWS. All the characteristics of data storage and accessing and putting and everything is driven by S3 buckets. Are we clear on this?
Yep.
So do you want to continue? Let's do some data ingestion, or do you want to take a break and continue in the evening?
Yeah,
Yes,
we'll
evening
continue
should
in
be
evening,
fine.
Shekhar.
Hmm?
Evening should be fine, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll continue in
Yeah.
the evening.
Yes, we can do it in the evening. I don't want you push too much stuff at one single shot so that you are not confused. I want you to learn this fun learning. So, do you think this is all good for you? No, I have given you clear correlation between S3 buckets and Snowflake. How things work. When it's a list put, why did they use list and put and get the same command? What is the reason for using the region when you're trying to sign up for a Snowflake account? Because they have to store this data in the S3 buckets. So I think I have correlated enough so that you can definitely understand how things work behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
Cool then. So if you have any questions, somebody was asking me in the beginning, right? Now we can look at it, and people, if they don't want, right, you can drop off as well. It's up to you guys. Who was asking me a question? Initially, when we started the class, right? Somebody had some questions, right? What was that? Do you guys have any questions for me, please? Okay, then if we don't have it, anything, then so do you guys want to workshop in one weekday, 1 or 2 days, so that you can connect and then do this data loading exercise and JSON exercises? If somebody runs into issues, somebody else can help who are senior or who are working already. If they can help, I want to set up one session once in a week in the weekday so that you guys can connect and you can talk to each other, and if you run into any issues you can ping me, I can help you out. But if you start doing one day in a week, because you cannot, if you cannot think that you cannot work daily, just log in and see what the other folks are doing. You will get to know what people are doing, right? There are other people who are very aggressive, and people you are very tied up with the work, you cannot work. So but I want you to have, this is my, I normally advocate, Means I push people to have workshop. We'll have a workshop on Wednesday for the data ingestion and JSON, so that you guys can do the class exercises or lab exercises. You can talk to each other, you can coordinate, and I need somebody to volunteer this to monitor the whole thing. Can somebody help me out with that? Who wants to volunteer and then take this class and then coordinate with everybody? Talk to Sindhu, get this session set up and all this stuff. Nobody wants to volunteer. Bhaskar, do you want to take this? Oh, Bhaskar left. Smart guy. Vikram, do you want to? I don't know how busy you guys are. If somebody can volunteer, right, that would be really helpful.
Yes, Shikhar, but I will be traveling this week. So from next week on, I will be available. This week,
Oh,
I
no,
won't.
no problem. So this week I will only coordinate. I'll set up a session, but guys, do log in and then try to do something. You have paid the fees. You're putting your time on it. Do something. Let's do constructively. I'll set up a session. Okay. I'll tell Sindhu to set up a session. I'll coordinate this week, and next week onwards, I need somebody to coordinate, please. Okay. Okay, guys. 5 o'clock in the evening. Let's catch up. Are we cool?
Thank you, Shekhar, sir. Yeah, we are good,
Thank
I
you.
guess.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Second, sir, I have some doubts actually for general purpose, not only for the Snowflake regarding the cloud.
Mhm.
Can I discuss for 2 minutes?
Oh yeah, go ahead, please. That's what I was asking everybody, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sir, actually, uh, previously in my company only, I worked with Azure with Synapse,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
there we understood how the computing happens, how the architecture happens, how the storage will happen in the Azure blob storage. That and all we come to know. And we also
Mm-hmm.
worked with Synapse database where we just create the tables with the partitions like hash partitions at hash, and there
Range
are
partition,
multiple kinds
hash
of partition,
partition.
yeah,
Yeah, I
range
know that.
partition, and
Mm-hmm.
creating, and from the Azure UI, right? We used to create tables from there only. Um, I don't remember exactly, but we used to get. We will be storing the files in the blob storage. From there, we are just querying and accessing that, and just did some basic exercise kind of thing in the project, like migrating the data from uh, IBM, that I don't remember the tool, but from there we are moving to this Azure
API
Synapse.
bucket.
Okay.
Azure blobs. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now the thing is, for example, now regarding this Snowflake, actually we have a Snowflake, we have Amazon Redshift, and we have a Synapse also in Azure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So after we are clear about this Snowflake, so if we get any chance to work on Redshift or Synapse, also the same concepts only would be there, right? But maybe some tool wise there will be some different changes would
Differences.
be there, but the thing, the basic thing will be the same only, correct?
Yes, the basic thing will be same, but there are some architectural differences. I have some documents comparing Redshift and yeah, Snowflake as well. There are some architectural differences. Why Snowflake is a little better than AWS? Why AWS Redshift is better than Snowflake? Those kind of things. But you can still work on them. But when you're starting work, if you start working, right, then you have to know. So Redshift is basically PostgreSQL, and then the coding is pSQL. PostgreSQL, that they use the coding part and all this stuff, they use the same stuff. So the underlying mechanism for Redshift is Postgres only. So Snowflake is
Mhm.
completely entirely new. So they are reutilizing whatever they have, but this is a different one. So there are some changes, some differences when you start working. That's it. That, but that should not be a very complex scenario.
Okay. And now you have told us today S3, right? So
Mhm.
working on Snowflake with AWS, in that case, we should be at least aware about the S3. And apart from
Yeah.
this, what else we should be aware in Amazon AWS?
Whatever you needed to learn, I'm going to teach you that. So if not, I wouldn't
Oh,
have spent one day of time on talking about S3 buckets. Why would I spend if I'm so commercial? I would have just shown you something and then finish my AWS part of it, right? But I want you to understand thoroughly so that you are much more comfortable. So whatever that you need on AWS, I'm going to teach you. Don't worry about that.
oh yeah. Okay. Thank you, Shekhar. This S3 now I am very much clear about it. It is easy to understand these slides and all.
Yes, yes. I'm going to send you all the docs and I'll give you
Okay.
all kinds of scenarios that we try to load from AWS to Snowflake, right? We have three ways of getting data and then Azure blobs. We'll talk about in the evening.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Shekhar.
No problem.